Welcome to the 50th episode of the Restore Your Inner Warrior show. I am so excited to be here with you today, just 11 months after the initial release of the very first episode on July 1st last summer. And I'm really excited about what the next 50 episodes will bring your way. If you've been following the show's journey and enjoying it, consider sharing it with others who might benefit from the messages, and also consider leaving a 5-star written review on Apple. Your love and kind words really do help other listeners find the show. So speaking of love and kindness, today's episode takes us into the heart of interactions and dissects empty exchanges versus meaningful engagement. So if you're struggling like I am to authentically connect with others, this episode is for you. After tuning in to today's episode, you'll gain some insights into what token kindness is and why it leaves us feeling even more empty. You'll get some perspective on genuine kindness and how it leads to authentic connection, and you'll also walk away with some new strategies to try as you seek meaningful engagement. Do you crave better self-esteem and confidence but feel stuck in a fog of uncertainty? If you're ready to gain clarity on your goals and cut yourself free from the fear, self-doubt, and worry holding you back, this show is for you. I'm Jennifer DeBellis, award-winning author, speaker, and clarity coach. I help women like you restore their inner worlds and get clear on their goals to confidently fulfill their greatest desires. Ready to restore your inner warrior? Then turn off those distractions and tune in to this next episode. So I want to open today's episode with just a little bit of context for what token kindness is, which is akin to like token niceness. It's this transactional, participatory, performative kind of exchange. It's those kind of exchanges where someone maybe asks a very generic, maybe cliche question like, how are you doing? How's it going? In passing. And they're really just kind of after this kind of like approval from others. Like, let's say you're, hanging around after an event. It could be in a church community or a professional community. And there are those individuals who are kind of like walking around, making sure like everybody's okay. And, oh, I've not seen your face before. And they ask these questions, but really what they're doing is this very transactional. Someone else is watching them, or they're a part of a particular ministry or something, and their job is literally to try to make people feel welcome and to reach out to you if you are new and tell you how to connect further and all those different things. But sometimes some of those interactions can feel very like empty, like meaningless. And that's exactly what we want to talk about today on this episode, where maybe even, taking it even further, maybe there's an individual who is like, putting it out there, like on social media, their Insta perfect, interactions or their Facebook interactions where they're do-gooders. They're telling everybody about the good acts that they've done and trying to seek that like self-gratification and all of the, the pats on the back and all the likes and the traffic and the comments and the encouragement that comes from, you're such a nice person, you're such a good person. When in reality, perhaps that interaction really didn't fulfill the needs of the other person to just really feel like they were engaging with another human being and being valued and being, like seen and heard and, understood. And so to take it even a step further, it's kind of like these uninterested interactions where maybe somebody, like the example I opened with, asks you something and they're not necessarily interested in your response, or maybe their response, even their body language might like be communicating just like this very generic response and reply. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. Oh, I'm glad. Sometimes the response doesn't even match what you just said because they're not entirely listening to understand. There's just this formality that maybe they're going through the motions of doing, so they can check that off as a transaction that's done off of the list of things that they have to do. And these interactions, I've been experiencing a lot of them over the last few years. I know it's gotten worse since the pandemic, but it was bad before then, but it's really bad right now. And I find myself really craving meaningful engagement, even with people who are already in my kind of circles of trust and the communities that I engage with. is I still keep coming across this same thing, even when people, like, you cross paths with people and they'll ask you something. And sometimes it's even like they have a little bit of intel, so they know you've been going through something rough. And then they'll say something, and maybe they're trying to be encouraging, but again, they're using this very like template, formulaic kind of responses that are like the safe or acceptable things to say. And sometimes those can feel very, not just empty, but almost dismissive. I know you've heard me talk about in other episodes, like when people will be like, oh, that's too bad, or you poor thing, or, even some of the insensitive things, well, it could be worse, or don't be a victim, and all these different dismissive things that are just extremely defeating. I found myself sharing something really vulnerable with somebody recently, and she kept trying to calm me, and maybe it was the way that was familiar to her, but just calming me with like very biblical prayer language that I should just trust God and just, look toward the future and all these different things. And I was literally like, okay, I'm literally going to talk about this week on the podcast. So it's very interesting that I'm going through this exchange right now, and I'm feeling firsthand again how frustrating it is when someone is even trying to be helpful and maybe trying to be genuine, or the closest that they know how to be genuine, but they're not really seeking to listen to what I'm saying and just meet me in that place of suffering. So genuine care is just that willingness to just sit with someone in that moment. Sometimes people will have those insightful things to speak back, but really, genuine interaction and care is this kind of reciprocal back and forth type of exchange that you feel seen and you feel heard. And those things are not being just dismissed or kind of like maybe lumped together in this like mountain of like, well, people go through this and all that little blanket stuff that happens. Because even if a person is trying to apply kind of like general terminology into your very specific and individual exchange with them, even if it's applicable, if they don't bring in some other context that lets you know, like, they're hearing me, they're listening, they're asking good questions, then it's just going to leave you feeling, again, like they're not trying to meaningfully connect. And that is very frustrating. That is exactly why I wanted to talk to you about this today. Maybe you're also going to take a little conviction from areas that maybe you can improve and become a more actively engaged and meaningfully engaged individual in your own interaction, so that it's not always just like, give me what I need, but also that you're also giving others what they need and kind of mirroring what it is that you're looking to receive back from them. So what I found out recently is you can get to a point where you are so hungry for these types of engagement that when you finally cross paths with someone who asks you just like one genuine question, and it's not generic, and you just feel like, okay, they actually are sincere, they're coming from a genuine place of care, they want to engage with me, that you could risk, like I did recently, just dumping everything on them, like just dumping way too much. I shouldn't say everything, but just dumping all of this stuff because you're like, okay, wow, I had a lot to say and there's a lot going on. And then a lot of times that person looks like they just want to run away because they're like, what did I just open up? I was genuinely caring about your response, but I was kind of looking for like maybe the 1 minute or the 2 minute response, and that we could kind of like talk back and forth. And this felt more like a therapy session. And so I kind of walked away from this recent engagement feeling very convicted because I was like, okay, I'm also clearly very deprived of these types of interactions, and I don't seem to have a lot of them. And if you are relating to that, you're in the right place today, in the right company, because there are things that we can do about that, and a little more nuanced than just like changing your surroundings, but it's also just as simple as changing your surroundings. And so I walked away from that experience really meditating on what happened and really trying to like self-reflect and say, okay, I got to get better at this. And I don't want to like ruin the potential for really good, meaningful interactions because I'm coming across as maybe needy or really, really deprived. And even if that's true, there's going to be times in your life, or maybe that is true, but you don't want to come across that way to where you scare people off. And these are the people you're looking for. These are your people that you are trying to build community and connection with. And so I found myself really thinking about it a lot, meditating. And this is maybe like several months later after this happened, where I went out with a friend and, someone who has also been kind of struggling with like feeling very like emotionally unavailable and emotionally not there. And I found myself over a long period of time just kind of like pulling back and just, kind of like going through my own grief process because sometimes people change or sometimes relationships change. And so here I found myself in this interaction with this individual, and she has a tendency of trying to divide her attention. And, I'm not around her all the time to know, is she doing it with other people or is she just doing it around me? And she's always like preoccupied with her phone and texting other people back, and she's not there with me. And it's weird because she'll ask me the questions and then she'll be like on her phone and the and the and looking up, and then she'll put it down. And so, so it's like there's a part of her that's aware, like, I just asked the question and I asked a good question that had a, maybe a more in detail answer, and then I'm not listening. And, it's like, I don't know if people are like, like kids when they're don't know you don't see them, when they're hiding behind the curtains and they don't know, like, oh, you can't see their feet hanging out the bottom. I don't know if grown adults are in that same capacity where with the new, technology being always ever present in our lives, if they realize that like the person that's right in front of them, engaging with them, hello, they can see you're hiding behind your phone. They can see. They can see you're doing that. They can see you're going through the mechanical motions. And so I found myself going through this situation, and I was hyper aware of all of the little nuances that were happening in the exchange. And I was really trying to like keep myself grounded, pause in between the texts. And then there were several times where, and this was the irony, if you can find irony in this, is that there was another individual who was supposed to be there with us, and she went and did something else because a better offer came along. And that was kind of like, haha, it's funny. So she got to go to an event instead of just hanging out, listening to music with us. And they were talking to each other, going bantering back and forth about the fact that, this other individual was supposed to be there with us. So there was supposed to be three of us. And she's at this other venue with a couple other people. And my friend is here with me. And the two of them are talking back and forth and joking, and they're actually in a group chat. So there's other people chiming into this group chat, and she's literally like interrupting to like laugh, to be like, oh my God, so and so just said this, or so and so. And it was, this funny interaction. But I thought this is like really weird because I don't know if she's saying it like to be kind of apologetic, like, I'm sorry, they're here. But like, I kept my phone in my purse and make that a habit to try to do that, because if I let it, my phone will always be interrupting me. I have a lot of things pulling for my attention also. And I get it. Sometimes I do get interrupted, but I'm very intentional about trying to like unplug so I can tune in to the interactions that I am showing up for, because I want to show up, and showing up means like, right, putting all that stuff aside. And so we're in this interaction, and I'm really kind of getting frustrated because I'm like with somebody who I at one time felt was very emotionally present. And I was just like, wow, this individual just either doesn't have the capacity to be that for me anymore, or is just not interested in it. And it was very devastating, but it got me thinking, like, well, one thing, sometimes no company is better than bad company, because if you're going to go and put yourself in a situation where you really have this like very basic need, and you're going through something, and you're trying to get positive, support and inspiration also, you're not just like, you can't always treat all the people in your life like they're your therapists. And so I wasn't trying to seek that. I was trying to just say, like, actually, what I was trying to do was kind of share some of the struggles, but also I wanted to like give like voice to some of the really great things that I'm starting to like develop and work on. And it was like, I never got that. It's like every time I would get the forward motion, it would be stalled by these texts. And then I would kind of like slow down, like pause, or like starts talking slower, because I didn't want to have to repeat myself, or I didn't want to feel even more frustrated that she wasn't even listening. And so, I found myself going back and forth in this little song and dance. And then this look of like pity was like constantly, she just kept giving me this look like, oh, I'm really sorry. Oh, I'm really sorry. But what I was saying, and at one point I was like, wait a minute, like, no, you're not listening to what I'm saying. I'm actually trying to share like something positive. And it was like, you could tell by that point she hadn't been listening to a lot of the stuff that I had been saying. In between point A and point C, she missed all of B because even though I was trying to like clarify that, there was like no registration. It was still just like, oh, I'm really, really sorry that you're going through some stuff. And my first thought was like, okay, I've got to reconsider the types of engagements that I do engage with this individual. Like, obviously, one-on-one engagement's not going to work right now because there's something there, and I'm probably going to go back to that individual and talk about it. The second thing that I walked away from that encounter with was a hyper awareness that I really have to be more intentional about cultivating some new relationships that are built on this balanced, meaningful interaction and exchange. And it doesn't mean that I have to run out the old relationships. It just means that I have to make time and be intentional about bringing in individuals and seeking individuals to have these healthy relationships with. So I want to emphasize that our quality of life really is impacted by the absence or healthy presence of meaningful engagement. And when it comes to the healthy presence, it's important to build our daily lives around people who also desire genuine care and meaningful interactions. And this extends beyond the desire to just belong and also feel like you're being valued. Some of the other benefits include increased self-worth and confidence. There are so many episodes in the Restore Your Inner Warrior library that talk about how to increase your self-worth and your confidence, as well as my next point, which is your sense of purpose and direction. So a lot of times we're kind of stuck, uncertain about a lot of things. And some of it is because we're just not actively engaging in the right environments to where we're meeting those needs, where we're thriving as a human being. And so it's super important for us to find these spaces. They also enhance our mental health and our physical health. And I don't mean just like all the endorphins and things like that. I mean, like, think about if you're an active person, for instance. I love physical activity. I like sports. I like competitive games. There are a lot of different things that I love to do, especially outdoors. And that physical activity is also really beneficial to your overall quality of life. I like to be outside so much. If you're watching today's episode, you can see that I'm outside on my patio because I couldn't pull myself away. It was such a nice day, and I was like, I'm staying outside. I want to stay outside because this is where I thrive. This is where I want to be. And I thought it was really fitting for the topic at hand, which is to put yourself in environments where you can thrive. And so even though I'm by myself talking to you one-on-one, it's still this very intentional action that I took. Also, our own empathy and capacity to grow as active listeners also flourishes when we open ourselves up to have this reciprocated kind of exchange with other individuals. And in these exchanges, it isn't just about like finding people to listen to us. I have a lot of people in my life because of maybe the line of work that I do, or maybe just because I've tried to be that person for a lot of individuals, which kind of led me into this work. I feel like a lot of people just want me to hear them and just want me to listen to them and maybe even give them good insights, but they don't want to do the same thing for me. And I do find that even a lot of these relationships and interactions where I've really put a lot of effort and intention into building these kind of reciprocal exchanges, I feel like they're very lacking on the other side. And our ultimate goal for these really healthy two-way exchanges is that we walk away feeling filled. So instead of feeling empty, we walk away feeling filled and fulfilled. So we had this desire, and maybe we didn't realize like all the desires that we had. Again, the whole like, I want to be valued, I want to be appreciated, seen, I want to belong, and all those different things. I want to be accepted for who I am, but to feel filled. This is just a really interesting thing. So I'm going to kind of flip this around on you, and I want you to consider some things. So when we think about passive listening, speaking, engagement versus active, here's some things to really think about for yourself. Because believe it or not, we can learn just as much, if not more, from self-reflection and evaluating, are we this thing that we crave in others? So are we a good and active listener? Are we speaking into situations a particular way? Are we avoiding those blanket statements and those very just like template, formulaic kind of responses, or maybe even insensitive responses that make someone feel like that they're foolish for acting or feeling the way that they feel in that moment. So what are we doing to contribute as being an active listener and engager? So are we modeling and really aiming to connect with other people when we're interacting with them? Or are we being passive until it's our turn? And I know I had to really work on that. When I was a young adult, I really struggled. No one really taught me that social skill. And I can just remember always feeling like I want meaningful engagement, coming out of high school and really not having a lot of meaningful engagement, and then coming into young adult life and that trap that most of us find ourselves in, where we're like so hungry for those types of interactions and we just want our turn. And so we're listening, but maybe not listening the same way we want someone else to listen for us. And maybe we're just reaping what we've sown, and we need to start sowing a better crop that we want to reap. So really, we have to self-reflect on that. And then, are we seeking to understand without judgment, without pity? And are we offering thoughtful questions and thoughts and responses that not only show that we were listening, but show that we have genuine care for the outcomes that the other individual is seeking? So I know some of this that I'm saying to you is feeling like, gosh, you're telling me how to be a better actively engaged listener, but what I really, really need is somebody to do these things for me. The best life lessons come firsthand. Someone can try to tell you things, but they come firsthand. And so when you can feel what it feels like to actually exhibit the types of behaviors that you're looking for from someone else, then you know exactly what you're looking for. You know what that body language is going to be. And then when you start to see it being reciprocated, it feels genuine. And so sometimes it's hard for us to know if people are genuinely listening to us. And you have to ask yourself, is that because I don't know the first thing about being a genuine listener or meaningfully engaging with individuals? And that's okay. I'm not saying that is a condemnation thing. Again, I'm talking about how we can become stronger on both sides of this, because we're looking for meaningful engagement, which means we have to be willing to give and also receive in the same capacity. And I don't mean like 50-50. I mean like the same capacity. There has to be a balance to what we're doing when we're trying to have meaningful engagement with others. And, my next question is, where are you going for this meaningful engagement and listening? Where are you going? Where are you meeting other individuals? Are you cultivating community membership, which is a safe place where meaningful engagement just organically happens? Are you being selective and intentional about these communities and even the circles that you already belong to? Are you being selective? And what I mean is, again, you don't have to clean house unless that's what you need to do. You only know what you need to do. But I'm saying, I'm not suggesting that you clean house and cancel everybody and block everybody like, oh, these people haven't been meeting my needs. But maybe reconsider who you gravitate toward when you do get into these circles of individuals. Maybe there's people in these very circles that you've already had maybe some meaningful exchanges with, and there's just been a lot of distance or a lot of years, and like reconnect with those individuals. You give yourself an opportunity to engage in an environment in maybe a new way or a renewed way and see where it leads you. A lot of times, the people that we are seeking to build meaningful connection with are already there in the same places where we're already frequenting. We're just not seeking them out, or we're not crossing paths with them because we're engaging in these interactions that are kind of leaving us feeling empty, and they're just token kindness and just transactional types of engagements. And what I have been practicing in my own inner circles is trying to move through those types of engagements quicker. So I know, like, when you get to a venue, for instance, and you're saying hi and being cordial, it's like, okay, I understand you've got to go through that, and you don't want to be rude or be like doing the very thing you say I don't want to experience myself. But you can also move through that quicker and be thinking, just be looking, scanning the room in a very like just natural way, looking for, where are those individuals that I know I can just feel their energy pulling me? And I know that I have either had meaningful engagement with them in the past, or I know that a previous conversation or interaction we had, I thought, man, if I were going to pick new friends, I would definitely want to go out on a coffee date with that individual, and we would probably talk for hours. Look for those individuals in those exchanges. It's not always about meeting new people, although you have to put yourself out there for that to happen as well. And I get it if you're introverted. introverted. I am about 60% introverted and 40% extroverted. So what I have learned, and I've talked about this in greater depth in previous episodes, is I've learned that I do really well on one-on-one. So again, I go into these environments and I seek that one-on-one connection where I don't feel like, oh my gosh, I'm the center of attention. Too many people are looking at me, and I can just start to meaningfully engage with one person. And I have had a lot of really great success. Even if we don't talk to each other outside of that event, it was very meaningful and very enriching while I was there. But there's also been a lot of really amazing networking opportunities and friendships that have evolved where later down the road, 6 months, 2 years, someone will email me or send me a text and say, hey, remember we were talking about that thing? Can you come speak at this luncheon, or can you collaborate with me on this particular thing and help me get the language right on this? And those are just amazing opportunities that I wouldn't have had I not just made myself vulnerable and went out of my comfort zone a little bit, but also stayed in it enough and learned about where my comfort is to kind of thrive within my comfort space. And the last thing I want to mention today is when you're trying to meaningfully engage with someone, do you keep yourself open to receiving insights from others who have lived experience? So what I mean by that is, you know that saying, iron sharpens iron, is that sometimes we can get focused. And one of my daughters went through a very long season of her life where she said, I don't want your advice. I just want you to listen. And, there were times where I was like, okay. And then there were times where I was like, God, it would be almost like criminal. It would be so inhumane for me to not like give her my insights in this, or just try to like guide her, or just challenge her thinking, or just give her a couple of things to consider as she's moving forward, trying to actually like make some life changes or make relational changes. And every time I'm thinking about this topic, I think about that long season where I think, okay, there are times when we just need to listen to someone, or we just need to be heard. But then there are also times where we're sharing something with someone and maybe we didn't go to them with like, give me your insights. I know you have lived experience, but all of a sudden they start speaking into our lives with wisdom from their own experiences and past trials and errors. And what foolishness to not be open to that. And so that is probably one of the best strategies that I can leave you with today is keeping yourself open to receiving the insights from people, dynamic people who have lived experience. Does that mean that you have to take everything that they say as like the gospel and the doctrine that you're going to live your life by? No, take everything under advisement. If you're working with a therapist, take it to your therapist, or you're working with somebody who's helping mentor you through something. Take it to your mentor, take it to your support group. Bring this additional insightful voice already into your collective where you're already trying to get other people's insights. So I'm going to leave you with these things to consider and try out as you navigate and set yourself up to have meaningful engagement. So until we see each other next episode, I want you to be encouraged and inspired to try these things out and just see how much they bring back into your life and how much they bless you. And also how much you might be a blessing to others too, which might not have even have been the thing that you were setting out to do. But that's like a bonus when you set out to have your needs filled, but then somehow you fulfill someone else's needs also at the same time. That's super fulfilling. And I just hope that you go through this next week remembering that you are amazing just where you are, and that you are excited about your personal growth and continuing on your journey and trying new things and seeing where they lead you. And in case you missed the announcement last episode, new episodes will drop every Tuesday. I like to consider these transformational Tuesdays, and I am so excited to share this journey with you.
Well, girl, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If so, follow my channel and share it with friends who also want to restore their self-worth and confidence. And if you're ready to get clarity and big picture vision on your goals, consider booking a one-on-one coaching session with me. Find a link in the show notes below to book a session. And as you go through your week, may your empowered spirit, heart, and mind guide you. Ciao.